Thank you for that. Welcome, everyone. I'm glad that you are here this Sunday. If I have not met you, my name is Peter. I'm one of the pastors here. And we are in our series where we're looking at the book, or the letter, if you prefer, of 1 Peter. The series is called Before There Was YouTube. Before there was YouTube, we had to read things to learn how to do stuff. Now with YouTube, we watch things to learn how to do stuff. The book of 1 Peter is teaching us how to be Christians. Now I have a question for you, and this is a rhetorical question. I don't need you to shout out your answer, but I just want you to think about, have you ever heard something that sounds so plainly wrong to you that you think, I don't know why anyone could believe that. That's just silly. But then, when you actually experience it, you go, oh, actually that's right. I thought it was wrong, but it turns out it's right. I'll tell you a story where that happened to me. When Mandy, my wife and I, we were early married, and we were spending more money than we were making. And anyone else ever done that? Yeah. What happened? You ran out of money. It blew my mind. I didn't see that coming at all, but Mandy seemed to understand that. But we were spending more than we were bringing in, and we were spending it. It wasn't a major expenditure. It was just 100 little ones, or maybe it was 1,000 little ones. And we decided that we needed to seek advice. And so we went around, and in different ways, sometimes talking with the bank, sometimes talking with people who just seemed to be able to live life a little tidier than we were doing it. We asked the questions, how do we fix this problem we have? And here is where I heard the information that it just couldn't have been right. And it was this. They said, in order for you to get what you want, which at that point, it wasn't grand things. It was rent. It was electricity. It was food. It was heat. These are the things that you really, really want. They said, in order to do that, you must budget. Now, I knew they were wrong. And here's why. I'll tell you why. Because the word budget, translated from ancient Hebrew and Aramaic and all through it's translated, you can't get what you want. Right? That's what it is. Look it up in old dusty textbooks. That's what it means. And what I was already doing was getting what I was wanting. That was working well for me. Yet we were running out of money. But the problem was, and when I say this, I mean it. Every person said, budget. This world is so full of foolish people. Just really, really foolish people. Until we encountered a moment where there was no more money. And we had to change something. It wasn't an option. It wasn't a request. It was a reality. Here is what I discovered. When I went on a budget, and by the way, this sermon is not about budgeting, although go on a budget. And if you don't know how to go on a budget, come talk to me. I can point you at people legitimately that will teach you how to go on a budget. And when I went on a budget, I discovered, number one, it felt like I got a raise. And number two, the things that I really wanted were actually getting closer, instead of just being things that I wanted that were so far off. And maybe someday, instead of talking about rent, we could talk about owning. And wow, I didn't even dare to dream. That's what I discovered when I looked at the thing that was first sounded wrong to me. Sounded obviously wrong to me. And yes, some of the things I had to say no to. I couldn't buy as much of these particular things that I didn't really care about. If you really want to be humbled, move. Find out how much stuff you actually don't care about. I say this to you. I hope this doesn't go bad. I hope I can keep my job. I once owned, every second of Star Trek that has ever been produced. All of it. Every bit of it. All of it. It all went to the Salvation Army. I know. It's sad. Because I didn't care. That was a lot of money. That was more money than I'm going to tell you about. I want you to take the figure you've got in your head, triple it, and then times that by 2. That's how much it was. You don't actually care about it. Those of you who work in the financial world, you know that I'm right. Those of you who struggle with money, there is a tension inside of you because you think I'm wrong. We know this. This is how this goes. You're not the first. Sometimes we hear things and it sounds wrong. It sounds so wrong that when we hear it or we read it, we kind of want to distance ourselves from a little bit and go, that's foolish. And we are about to read something just like that. But if you'll stick with it, and if you'll stick with me through to the end, there's a truth that will emerge from this that actually will change your life in a way budgeting never can. So, let's begin reading. 1 Peter chapter 4, verse 12. This is what was just read to us. Let's read it again. Dear friends, don't be surprised at the fiery trials you are going through. Now, I want you to remember that Peter is writing to the people in Asia Minor, where a whole bunch of them have just become Christians recently. And Peter is speaking to them about Jesus, but he is speaking to them, those who would have come to the communion table and said, yes, Jesus is Lord. But while that is happening, they are under persecution. The persecution is ultimately coming from a guy named Nero, or at least by his order, it's coming. Now, if you read history at all, you will read about Nero. Nero's a big, big name. Nero is a ruler. He's a king. But in the time, we also believed him to be a god. So now people are not worshiping Nero. They are worshiping Jesus. This is a problem. And so Nero, there's two distinct moments that we're going to talk about, although there are a lot of distinct moments with Nero. This is just two of them. One of them is, we suspect strongly that Nero is responsible for the burning down of the old part of Rome. Now, you need to understand the significance of Rome and the time. This is the center of the universe in a very real way. And we suspect strongly, we can't prove it, but boy, we really think that at least by his order, he said, burn down what is old and we are going to rebuild what is new. What he rebuilt is now what we call Old Rome. So this is the Colosseum. This is all this that's all happening as an effect of this mass destruction of what is. Now, he didn't send out word saying, pack your stuff, we're going to go. He just lit it on fire. That's number one. Here's number two. This we know for sure, real sure. This is documented all over the place. Nero hated Christians, and he would capture Christians. He would cover Christians in a flammable tar-typed substance, and he would light them ablaze and use them on poles to light his gardens. Shall we read the first verse again? Dear friends, don't be surprised at the fiery trials you are going through. Context matters, doesn't it? Don't be surprised at the fiery trials you're going through as if something strange is happening to you. It's not strange. It's happening all over the place, so don't be surprised by it. Instead, now here's where he goes off the rails. At least that's what it looks like. Be very glad. That's a tall order, am I right? Be very glad, for these trials make you partners with Christ in his suffering, so that you will have the wonderful joy of seeing his glory when it is revealed to all of the world. So Peter's playing the long game here. And he's saying, when you connect yourself with Jesus, when you say, I am a follower of Jesus, when you say Jesus, the guy who came from the carpenter's family, is actually Jesus, the Son of God, God himself, and I believe in him, and I believe what he says, and it has affected my life, and I am in the process of observing as Jesus, as God changes who I am, then we will be with him at the end when he comes back. And the suffering that we go through now connects us with him, and we will be there at the end. Okay, now that changes it, doesn't it? Instead of going, oh good, everything I have is burning, and perhaps me, myself, or even worse, someone I love. Instead of that, we are saying the long game is we are connected with Jesus. Jesus who suffered. Our suffering, connected with his suffering. We are connected. That's good, even though what's happening is bad. So that we will have the wonderful joy of seeing his glory when it is revealed to all the world. If you are insulted because you bear the name of Christ, you will be blessed. To be clear, they are being insulted. To be very clear, there are no nice words coming their way. Have you ever been insulted for bearing the name of Jesus? When Peter is talking about fiery trials, this is a practical conversation. When Peter is talking about being insulted, this is something that connects with everyone. I am not, that I know of, my house is not on fire. I am not on fire. That part is not directly to me. But this is. Let me tell you how this works in my life. One of the things that I love, it's not a need, it's a want. This is nice, firmly in the want. I really like a barbershop experience. I'm very specific about what a barbershop is. I'm even more specific about what a barbershop isn't. Most of the people in here do not go to a barbershop. Your hair looks wonderful. It's all good. But I like the barbershop experience. A barbershop caters primarily to men. They will cut women's hair. If women wanted a men's haircut, come on in, you can get it. No problem. But you go in there are barber chairs, and there are a group of guys standing there. They do two things. The first is they cut hair. The second is they heckle each other and heckle you. I love it. It is so much fun. I can smell the place. It smells like Barbasol. Who knows what Barbasol is? Yeah, that's the smell. When you walk into a barbershop and you go, they all smell the same. It's Barbasol. I love the combs and the blue sauce. I love that. I love that they don't sell shampoo. They don't care if you use shampoo. They've never heard the word conditioning, and they do not sell hair product. Ugh. Do you want hair product? I don't even want to be here. I want to go to a barber shop. And they heckle. I love that. Listen, I grew up in a way where teasing means that you're loved, you're included. It's just what we do. Not everyone grew up that way. I did grow up that way. I think it's funny. Not everybody thinks it's funny. I think it's funny. If you go to a barbershop and you don't think it's funny, you're in trouble. Just letting you know. You're not going to like it, but I love it. And when the conversation dies down, there is a question they all ask. So what do you do? If you were a mechanic, they would say, oh, what's your favorite kind of car? Or they might say, what kind of car would you not buy? If you're a doctor, they might say, have you seen anything gross? If you're an accountant, they might say, what's your favorite number? If you're a pastor, it's conversation over. And there's a silence that goes through the place. Now, I have to hit pause in the sermon here. Oh my goodness. If you are thinking of coming up after the service to me and saying, have you considered it's an excellent opportunity to witness? Would you please spare me? I have thought of that elementary question eons ago. That's not what's happening. There's a lot of reasons why conversations stop. Perhaps it's a sign of respect, could be. Perhaps it's a sign that they've been hurt in a church before. I don't know if you've ever been hurt in a church before. That's a sting that doesn't go away anytime soon. Perhaps they don't know what to say. And perhaps they can't select from the words that they're thinking. It's just happening too fast. And there I sit in the barber chair, and I want to say, but I also like cars. Hey, Rider game last night. Pretty good, eh? But the air in the room, it's changed. Doesn't smell like Barbasol anymore. It smells like tension. And as I sit there, I can begin to feel deeply troubled and like I need to defend myself. And I need to say, I believe this to be true. With all of my heart, I believe this to be true, and I'd love to tell you about it, but I also want you to know I'm not here to dish out a serving of judgment. I'm here for a haircut. That's why I'm here. I love a barbershop. I hate a barbershop. I don't know why. I don't know why it happens there more than it happens elsewhere, but it does happen there, and I'm not alone in that. That's what happens. And I can feel the insult. I can feel, and whether or not this is true, you can feel it. It's like a monster in the closet. I can feel people going, he is somehow more simple than me. He thinks that there's God, and I believe in science. Hey, listen, folks, I believe in science. I know the guy that invented it. I do. He believes in God creating everything, and I believe in a Big Bang. Listen, God created sound too. At the beginning, it might have made a bang. I wasn't there. I don't know. But I know where the bang came from. He believes that Jesus is going to send me to hell. No, I do not. You are wrong. I believe Jesus is going to offer you an invitation to heaven. It's a lot of thinking to do while someone is over your head with scissors. If you are insulted because you bear the name of Christ, you will be blessed, for the glorious Spirit of God rests upon you. I'm going to guess most people in here do understand on some level what it is to be insulted, whether or not the words were actually uttered. My brother-in-law, whom I love, is a conspiracy theorist, better than other conspiracy theorists. I love having conversations with him. He is fascinating. I hear about all kinds of things. I hear about how Hitler is still alive. I hear about aliens. I hear about all of the things. I love having those conversations with him when he will permit me to have them, but sometimes he won't talk to me. It's a little insulting because I'd like those conversations with him. And I don't want to stop them. I want to hear about what he finds interesting. If he played the flute, my daughter plays the flute. If he played the flute, I'd want to hear him talk about the flute. I don't want him to stop. And I think each of us have experienced something like that. There is an interesting story that happens. We're going to move away from 1 Peter here. And sorry, in the booth there, you're going to have to stick with me. The book of 2 Corinthians, not written by Peter. It's written by a guy named Paul. Peter and Paul were kind of they sort of worked together and they sort of worked against each other. They had the same objective ultimately, but they had different targets, and it's quite a story. But Paul is super direct, and Paul talks about how he sees visions, vivid visions that are from God. And he will talk about the 3 levels that he has seen, and he will talk about heavenly things and what it's going to be like, and he will issue warnings, and he will talk about experiences with Jesus that leaves almost everyone else saying, yeah, Paul, cool, doesn't fit my reality. You go, man. You do you. It's pretty vivid for him. And in 2 Corinthians chapter 12, starting in verse 5, it says this. That experience that I just described, that experience is worth boasting about, but I'm not going to do it. I will boast only about my weaknesses. If I wanted to boast, I would be no fool in doing so, because I would be telling the truth, but I'm not going to do it. Because I don't want anyone to give me credit beyond what they can see in my life or hear in my message. And his message is clear: Jesus, Jesus only, Jesus ever, Jesus always. Even though I have received such wonderful revelations from God, even though I've received that, in order to keep me from becoming proud, listen close, I was given a thorn in my flesh, a messenger from Satan to torment me and to keep me from becoming proud. For years, we have done gymnastics trying to figure out what was the thorn in his side. Was it appendicitis? Was it an actual physical thorn from something that's pierced his side and he can't pull it out? Is it a bug? Is it a sickness? What is it? And the answer is, who cares? That is not the point. That is not the point. Drop it. Move on. That's not important. What's important is this. 3 different times I begged the Lord to take it away, and each time the Lord said, listen, my grace is all you need. My power works best in weakness. I won't take the thorn from your side because I am enough. I won't take the fiery trials from you because I am enough. I won't take the insult from you because I am enough, and my power works best in those times. And you will be like me, so says Jesus, because I suffered and now you suffered, and you're suffering because of who I am. If you reject who I am, the barbershop experience goes much easier. Nero's not nearly as interested in you. But because of your connection with me, it brings about suffering, and that suffering bonds you with me in a way that you don't understand unless you've been there. Back to 1 Peter chapter 4, where we've made it to the second part of verse 16. Praise God for the privilege. I have to back up here, I'm sorry. We're going to back up to verse 15. If you suffer, however, it must not be for murder. So, if you're murdering, stop it. Stealing, if you're stealing, stop it. Making trouble or prying into other people's affairs. Wait a minute. Murder, being nosy. Murder, saying, I can't sleep at night until I learn what caused this person to act this way, so now you have to tell me. These are held as the same thing, the same importance, the same weight on the scale, if you will. Why is that? Because, honestly, we're really good at nosy. Like, if you think about this, if we were not, like globally, if we were not nosy, I don't think social media would continue. Like, I think it would stop. But actually, this is not a commentary about social media being right or wrong. We use it as a church. It is a confusing and often frustrating way of communicating with people, but it's the best we've come up with. But if we weren't nosy, if we didn't gossip, if we didn't just share things that we thought were interesting that have nothing to do with us at all, I actually don't think there'd be enough money in it for it to continue. But don't worry, there's plenty of money in it. Peter is talking to Christians, and he is saying, none of your business. Just don't engage. Just don't. When someone says something that's wrong, don't correct them. When something is said that they vag booked. Who knows what vag booking is? Nobody. Okay, vag booking is when you put down something on Facebook or whatever, like, well, that was really something, and then you sit there and you just wait for people to say, what? What was? Who done it? Who was it? That's vag booking. It's all gossip. And since the beginning of this book, Peter has been talking to Christians and he has been saying, don't do anything that will push people who don't believe away from the truth of who Jesus is. Don't murder. Don't steal. Don't be nosy. Don't gossip. Because that will push people away. I once worked with a person, not here, who had an opinion on everything. So much so that we would keep information from this person because we didn't trust their response to be something helpful. And I will never forget the day when this person, after posting something on Facebook that meant that I got to have a meeting with them later on, said to me, I'm getting off Facebook, there's just too much drama. And I was like, yes! There is so much less drama on Facebook if you're off it. The cause of it is you. Just stop. Let it go. Let it go. Let it go. Let it go. If someone doesn't know how to spell the right there, let it go. Let it go. What's the Frozen song? Let It Go? Who's humming that song right now? Okay, I've never seen the movie, but people sing this song, and I think it's got a solid point. Let it go. Pat, would you mind standing and singing us that song? Just let it go. Jesus is enough. Not Peter Ralph. Not Joanna Smith. Jesus. Joanna Smith has a British accent. She sounds smarter than us when she talks. And not even she is enough. But Jesus is. And Jesus' power works when things are wrong. Praise God for the privilege of being called by his name. For the time has come for judgment, and it must begin with God's household. And if judgment begins with us, what terrible fate awaits those who have never obeyed God's good news, like the don't gossip part. And also, if the righteous are barely saved, what will happen to the godless sinners? So if you are suffering in a manner that pleases God, keep on doing what is right and trust your lives to God, to the God who has created you, for he will never fail you. There is a chance, as the worship team comes back to the stage, there's a chance that you might be sitting there thinking, I'm too far down this path. I have got this wrong too long. I don't know who I am if I'm not nosy. I don't know who I am if I'm not a thief. By the way, we talk about murder. The father of one of my good friends is a convicted murderer. He did it. And he talks about his murderous heart that God is healing him from. I have no visions that there is no one in here who has not murdered. That's not necessarily true. So I say that in order to bring freedom and say, let me tell you about Jesus. But if you think you're too far gone, I want to remind you of the story of the author of this book, Peter, who literally followed Jesus close enough that the dust from Jesus' sandals got on Peter's clothing. They hung around a fire together. They joked together. Jesus taught Peter, change your life things. Peter saw Jesus do stuff that cannot be explained other than Jesus is Lord. And after all of that, a young girl about the age of my daughter said to Peter, hey, you're one of them Jesus people, aren't you? And he felt the shame, whether or not there's a monster in the closet. He believed that there was. And he felt the shame and he said, no, I'm not. He was confronted a few times and he said, nope, not me. In fact, at the end, he felt so much pressure, he felt so much trouble that he got mad and he said, I don't know what you're talking about. I've never met the guy that you speak of. I'm just warming my hands by a fire. And then Jesus died. When Jesus came back from the dead and saw Peter, I think that was the worst moment in Peter's life. As others celebrated, I think Peter swore under his breath, uh-oh, what do I do now? Don't worry, me and my stupid mouth are going to get me out of this trouble. And he went up to Jesus and he said, and I'm paraphrasing, I love you, I'm sorry. And Jesus said, forgiven. Now let's move on to the next thing. And Peter said, no, you don't understand. I'm sorry. I love you. And Jesus said, got it. Let's move on to the next thing. And Peter said, you don't get it. I'm sorry. And I love you. And Jesus said to him, do you? And quit talking to me and go over there and love someone who I love about. And that is what Peter is doing in the book of 1 Peter. And if you're going through fiery trials or your own mouth is getting you into trouble, don't worry. Jesus can change you. Don't seek it out. But if you find yourself in those troubles, remember, Jesus suffered. We are connected with him. And when he comes back, we're going to be there. By the way, the very last verse of the communion scripture is Jesus saying, I'll not eat and drink of this again until I do it with you. Me. You. That's what's coming. That's the good news of who Jesus is. That's what the invitation is. Sounds crazy until you work through it and then you go, actually, I want that worse than anything. Give me some of that. If you want to talk more about this, after the service, come to the front.
I picked Desert Song to sing as our last one because I felt like it fit in with Pete's message today. And the one line that really stuck out on me is, "This is my prayer in the battle when triumph is still on its way." We do know the end of the story. We do know how things are going to end for us and for the world. We know that Jesus defeated death, and in doing so, defeated our sins and our trials and our tribulations. And so I just encourage you as you go about your week to remember, no matter what it is that you're dealing with, we know the end. We know that Jesus wins. The prayer team will be available at the front. If you have trouble of your own making or trouble of someone else's making that you would like somebody to pray with you about, we would love to do that. If not, blessings on you as you leave on the rest of your week, and we will see you back next Sunday.